Today we're back in Portsmouth meeting one of my Property X members, Adam, who has recently completed the refurbishment of his latest buy-to-let property. And today we're going to take a look around and we're going to discuss the lessons he's learnt. Adam, welcome back to the channel.
Justin, pleasure to see you again.
It's only been about 12 weeks or so.
It has, from start to finish, full refurb in 12 weeks.
Which is really impressive, to be fair. And my initial impressions walking in, the refurb actually been done to really good quality. Not that I thought you'd have any different, but are you pleased with how it's turned out?
I am indeed, yeah. When you sort of look around the whole property, kind of the qualities that I shared with what I want the end product to look like is exactly what the builders have done to the place. So yeah, really thrilled with the end result.
Good. So if we'll take a wander around so everyone can see kind of what we're talking about as we're talking about it. But what I'm seeing is obviously you've done it to a really nice neutral standards. When I say high quality, I'm like looking at the skirting, I'm looking at the arcs, the way that obviously the pipe work's been done. So I feel like it was a very professional outfit that you've worked with here. Yeah. Before we go on to talk about that, in terms of your involvement in this project, have you been heavily involved over the last 12 weeks during the refurb?
So I had a lot of trust and faith in the builders, and completely honest, I could have been fully hands off. I could have said, here's the keys, here's what I want it to look like, this is kind of it, and I know the finished product would have been a great result. But for my own kind of education, learning, obviously I'm documenting the journey on Instagram as well with videos. I wanted to be down, once a week to see how they'd got on and also discuss with them the week ahead to know what's coming in the following week so we can keep track of progress. So I was sort of hands-on, but hands-off as well. They were great in sort of keeping me updated with progress during the week and texts and calls, but there wasn't really many major problems during this refurb, and they've absolutely smashed it out of the park.
In the time then that they've been doing the refurb, there hasn't been many problems. That's quite rare. Normally when I go out, people are like, oh, we've had this problem, we've had this to overcome. So first of all, that's great news. I think that does come down to how well sometimes you select the builders as well. Talking of the builders then, do you think there's any reason as to why there wasn't any problems? When we're looking at the type of builder and what they did, is there any reason you feel like that is the outcome?
Obviously, when I was choosing the builders for the project, I had sort of 3 different quotations. The aim was I wanted a one sort of contact builder, so I could deal with one person and everything was done under that sort of branch. So knowing that, one of the brothers was an electrician, one was a plumber, someone else in the family was carpenter and roofer, all in-house, if you like, was kind of the confidence I know that there wouldn't be corners cut because they're all holding each other accountable. And when choosing that builder, it did come down to kind of what I thought when I went to see some of their work, how they arrived, and the professionalism that they sort of brought with them. Branded clothing, branded van, and the quality of work that I've seen on their other projects because I went to see them. So that was what gave me the confidence to know that these are going to be good guys to work with on this project, and of course future ones.
What would a builder do that wouldn't give you confidence?
Some of the other builders, they turned up late, and it's not the be all and end all because not everyone has huge fancy vans, but something like that. The builders I chose came with a can-do positive attitude. They were able to quickly identify issues that I hadn't seen and the solution in order to resolve it. And we're sort of like, yeah, we can get that fixed, not a problem, that will resolve that. And they have done exactly that. Whereas some of the other builders were like, yeah, that's going to be an issue, that's going to cause problems. Yeah. And it's that attitude that really helped me decide on the builders to go with.
Really good points. So it's like, potentially lateness is potentially, turning up untidy or an unclean van or what have you. And it's maybe potentially making mountains out of molehills, really, because if they're doing that at the beginning, there's probably a good chance it's going to get worse.
And it's probably why there was really minimal headaches throughout the whole process, because everything I do is to hold myself to a high standard, and that's what I expect of the work, obviously, of the project as well. And there was no corners cut. It wasn't a case of how cheaply can I do this refurb on it. This is obviously a nice area in Southsea of Portsmouth. We're only a few minutes from the beach. Even the estate agent, when they came round and obviously gave the keys over for it to go on the letting market, said it's one of the highest quality refurbs they've seen for a project, which is obviously great news to hear, especially on one of the first projects that I've done here.
Yeah, I think you should be really impressed. I think you've done an awesome job. What we'll do is we'll walk through the kitchen. I want to show everyone what else we've got going on, so everyone knows the kind of layout for this property. It's your kind of typical 2 up, 2 down, which has been extended, hasn't it? So you've got front room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom at the back, and your 2 bedrooms up there, haven't you?
Yeah.
But if you head into the kitchen, again, I think this is a massive feature point. Often they say 2 rooms in a house sell a property or rent a property. It's the kitchen and the bathroom, which is why I always try to do my kitchens and bathrooms as well as possible. And I really feel like you've gone and done a really good job of this one.
Thank you.
Kitchen was, which supplier was it again?
From Wren.
It was Wren.
Again, that's kind of the involvement I had, is they came up with the drawings design. I sort of said, you know, units across here, cupboards, space for fridge, freezer, boiler enclosed in here, sinks, etc., space for washing machine. They got it all sort of measured, mapped out, and said, you know, what sort of design. So I said, I'll pop down to Wren in Portsmouth and I'll have a look, because there's one thing seeing pictures and 3D designs, but I wanted to go and choose that myself. And then I'm really happy with the combination. It's still neutral. You've got sort of contrasting units with worktop.
Yeah.
The black features. I think it's really nice that it's going to appeal to kind of the whole market of people wanting to rent.
100%. I think anyone watching, take note, you know, the fact that the paneling on the side is a small feature and looks really nice. The worktops are great, and like, because you've gone for dark worktops to then match the extractor and obviously the backsplash, I think it looks really good. So
I did think about tiling as well behind it, but it was maybe possibly too much.
I often think a little lit often looks really good.
Yeah.
So good. Well, let's take a look at the shower room, which is just at the back of the house. Remember last time that we were here, we were talking about damp and mold, because this was slightly prevalent in this room, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
One of the reasons possibly that, again, when you're coming to view a property, other people might get scared.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember you had a very pragmatic view about it. You had a plan, you spoke to the builders.
Yeah.
So you've executed on that. You've done your extractor fan.
Yeah, better extraction unit. Obviously flat roof where it was decaying, so obviously any moisture getting in. I think the fact that the person that tenanted before was an older gentleman, I imagine it wasn't ventilated correctly. And just probably years, you know, it was a very old type of property, and I think years of just leaving it over time caused obviously the problems. But no, it's something that you've always taught, something always known as those key points are areas where we can have value that would scare other people or first-time buyers, but for developers like ourselves, that's what we look for, is something to resolve and add value to it.
100%. The things that scare others are opportunities for us as investors and developers. I really like the tiles that you've used, and is that something that you've chosen or the builder's chosen? Like, what's your involvement with that?
Yeah, tiles. So we put these on the previous renovation project as well. Loved them there, with the chrome and the white units, simple, clean, modern. And I just thought that's a really nice tile. So I thought, you know, use it again. And I think moving forward, I know now that, you know, this type of rain shower, these features, they all work together. So it'll be a case of a blueprint, lift, rinse and repeat for future projects.
100%. This sort of property I see for you being this kind of like bread and butter kind of rental.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. Well, let's take a look upstairs. Cool, so we are upstairs in the back bedroom, and this is the bedroom that had the problems.
It did indeed, yeah. So when I viewed it, the wallpaper had gone, the plaster had blown. That was one of the issues we resolved with repointing. Obviously there was bricks missing and a guttering issue. All of that resolved, and like we said, downstairs in the bathroom, something that someone would have come in and thought, oh my God, I'm not touching that with a barge pole. You find the problem, you find the solution, and you resolve it. So this was the worst of the two. But again, the theme, neutral, clean. It's a good sized room.
It is a good.
It's a good sized room.
Yeah.
So that, you know, people can add to it what they want, their own features, cupboards to make it kind of their own space.
So it was roughly around 12 weeks start to finish.
Yeah.
Everything.
Bang on to have it. Yeah, exactly.
Really impressive.
Yeah.
Genuinely, because when we came in, you know, it was definitely clear that some of those rooms were going to be completely stripped, started again. You've had rewire,
boiler was serviced but had a lot of parts on it changed to the longevity of its life. You know, the last thing I'd want is in 6 months, a year time to be like, this boiler issue. So whilst it didn't need a whole new boiler, it needed good service, a flush, new radiators throughout, new carpet, skirting. And that's kind of when I talk about the high standard finish. There was no, oh yeah, we could save that door. You know, we could save some cost here. Maybe if we just painted the radiator, it was, no, you know, gut it completely, all needs to be new, which is why the cost of the refurb might be higher. But at the end, if I'm looking for that higher return sort of rental income, you've got to add those touches and those features to get that.
Yeah, and I honestly think you'll get a premium here, not only just on the refinance, but probably on the rental. I think it's really important to remember as well that when you're doing buy, refurbish, refinance, you're often setting yourself up for the future. Yes, you're coming in here to buy cheap and refinance high, but if you're doing a lot of the work, you're hopefully saving yourself a lot of maintenance for the first 5 years of the life of that property, right?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And where I will self-manage the ones I have, and will be self-managing this one as well, having that reassurance almost in my mind that I'm not going to get calls for a little while to say there's a problem, is what I wanted to do, because I ultimately wouldn't want to finish a full refurb and then immediately have issues crop up straight away. So, do it all, get it correct and correct to standards, and then on to the next.
Absolutely. So do the big reveal. How much did it cost in total to do this refurbishment?
Total refurb cost, including VAT, because unfortunately came under slightly what I expected to be, but it was 48,000.
Okay.
End value of 255,000, just because we've gone that little bit further with the refurb. And rental, it's on the market, it's just been on live. I'm pretty sure we've got a tenant lined up at sort of 1450 per calendar month. Going to return around 500, 550 profit a month.
Yeah, which is a really good profit margin. When a lot of people are obviously working in, and we've discussed this before, but in potentially slightly lower value areas, yes, it might not cost you as much to get in the deal. Yes, you might be able to pull out a fair amount as well, so you're not leaving too much in, but your profit margin might be a lot smaller as well. So then in this area, particularly in Portsmouth, down the south coast, the property values are much higher.
Yes.
So higher capital needed to get into the deal. You will inevitably, in most instances, find it more competitive, and you will probably leave a bit more in, but then the profit margin is there with the rentals. Really, it can often work out the same as owning 2 cheaper properties.
Exactly, but with this one, there's only 1 boiler, not 2. There's half the issues that you get if you have 2 properties, each to their own. For me, the key was investing close to home, purely the fact of, well, I'm still in full-time employment, being able to come down. If it was further away, then I wouldn't be able to go and make the visits as much. I wouldn't be able to do the check-ins. I wouldn't be able to document. So that's really why it was key for me to choose somewhere and continue, investing close to home for now anyway, until property becomes a full-time business.
Yep, I truly agree with all of your reasoning, and I think it's important to enjoy what we're doing. Let's take a look at the other bedroom. In this room, I guess, we've seen what the refurb looks like. You've done it in a very neutral way, which is perfect for the BRRR model. It's perfect for renting. Actually, what I want to talk about more in this room is, I guess, advice that you would give to yourself at the beginning of the journey. Okay, this wasn't your first property.
No.
But it's your first one, I guess, doing a refurb, being fully hands-off and leaving a contractor to do everything. But if you had to go back to you prior to getting into property, what are some bits of advice you would give to someone at the start?
If someone's in a similar position to me, maybe lives around this area, I had the sum of capital to begin with, so I could make that first step into finding the property. I think there's 3 key bits of information to share. One is the education. Property can be an expensive game if you make mistakes and if you get things wrong. So you really need to have that fundamental education, not just on the refurbs, but on analysing deals, the conveyancing process, and every aspect in between, because ultimately it will end up being, more expensive than you think it's going to be. Again, that's why you've just got to make sure you do your due diligence and all of those sort of aspects. Second piece of advice, which leads on to education, is the deal finding. And the deal kind of valuation that is bread and butter in property, is finding what would make a good property deal, whether it be BRRR, whether it be a flip, or whether it be a buy-to-let. They all have different criteria which would make them a good deal. Just practice it. Even a case of doing the analysis at home, thinking, yeah, this could make a good deal. Even if you go out with the intention of not buying the property because it's not one you personally want, go and see if it would make a good deal. Go and view it, take the videos, come back, crunch the numbers, and get really good and confident at doing that. And then you're ready to go out and do it for yourself. And I think number 3, which was key for me, is taking action. Procrastination and hesitation can be the longest time in the world between thought and action. It's the actual case of going out, and if you've got this goals to make property a business, you could spend 7 months just watching all of the YouTube videos, even longer, spend years watching thousands of YouTube videos, reading hundreds of books, but unless you take that first step, then you're not going to get anywhere in the business. And I think it's just key for everyone to understand that You know, just go for it, take the leap. The biggest lessons come from going through the process, you know, learning from mistakes, learning from things, the good and the bad, and putting that into action.
I couldn't have said really those 3 points better myself, and they're spot on. I think something you really highlighted there is obviously taking action. And I know that in the last video we talked a little bit about the accountability of the group that we have. Is there anything else you feel like over the time of buying this and the refurb that has been helpful to you being part of Property X, the community, having that kind of group around you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's loads, right? There is loads of benefits, but a few that come to mind is one, the group of people that we have in Property X. You know, we were at your site visit only a few weeks ago. I remember we just stood in each of your projects in the circle, and we're all just rattling off ideas and conversations and questions of things that I hadn't even thought about, but just was adding value to each other. And it's interesting because I can see why you do the mentorship now, because I've had people from the group ask me questions on things, and it's so rewarding being able to give value that's going to help someone else. So that's one part, the community, the network of really great people. The second part is the power team, of course, the conveyancing team. All of those networking connections that you're able to have introduced me to has made the steps and the process of the buying anyway so much easier.
I think you've absolutely nailed that, spot on. I think it's so important to be part of some form of group, some form of mentorship and community as well.
Property can be very lonely if you're doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's good to have those good group of people.
People hear that a lot, but you don't know it until you go out and do that first deal, and then you're like, I feel like I haven't got anyone to bounce questions off of, and I feel really isolated in this. So before we go down, because we're about to go down, I'd like to ask you questions about what you've got planned next.
Yeah.
Because I want to share that with the channel. But I do want to say that, yeah, I think you're exactly the sort of person that we have and want within Property X. And I just wanted to say, I think you, as well as taking value from us, which is great, you give a lot back to the community. I think that is exactly what we're after with people, okay? That's why when we jump on calls with people, when Steve, who works with me, when he jumps on call with someone, we find it so important to find the person with the right mindset, and you absolutely had that going into this. So again, bit of advice for someone brand new. Yes, it's great to watch the videos, have the capital, but I think you have to fine tune that mindset, don't you, into going, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, let's head downstairs. So I just quickly want to say that you are about 5 months into the year, but also being with Property X. You have not only joined, taken massive action, bought this property, refurbished it, and you're now about to obviously rent it out and refinance it, which is a massive achievement, by the way. So I just wanted to quickly say that. But also off the back of the last video that we did, there was a few questionable comments. Yeah. Okay. He won't come out and find you at your house. Okay. But
I'm too busy to do that. Too busy taking action.
But I think we should address some of them.
So there was a lot of positive feedback and a lot of great comments, which I appreciate, obviously, as reviewing them. But, there were some people that talked about, he could have saved time if he'd have just put, 20 more grand in, saved himself the headaches and done it a lot quicker, getting a buy-to-let. Where I'm at and what I want to achieve, buy-to-lets isn't a strategy I want to follow, and it's not something that interests me, which it may do for other people. And talking about headaches, well, I can comfortably say this whole process, there hasn't really been any. There's nothing that's kept me up at night or stressed me out, so there was no headaches there. And yes, if you'd have spent that little bit more money, you could have had a turnkey buy-to-let, but that's no fun. There's a lot of learning that I've done in here and that I can take as a blueprint to follow on for future projects that I can sort of rinse and repeat, but also demonstrate to potential investors, that might want to work with the company in the future. Here's the proof of concept, this is what we do, and this is our standard. Yeah. So, while the comment was slightly negative, there was a lot of positives that I took away from the feedback as well.
Yeah, and I think what's so important to remember is everyone has different goals, for one, okay, and two, everyone has a different amount of capital, okay? If you've got £2 million, it's very easy to go and buy lots of turnkey buy-to-let properties, not need to refurbish anything. But if you're working with a pot of money which won't enable you to get to your goal, you need to be a little bit more creative. And that doesn't just mean, getting as much out of a deal, but it also means going through the experience, getting the learning. It means finding a great build team that you can rinse and repeat this process with. So I think you've done that very well. I think the other thing to mention is speed. A lot of people are so slow when they get started. You'll probably get to the end of this year with 1, 2, maybe even 3 in that 12-month window, whereas someone else might be sitting there watching that, saying that, but it hasn't got that first one yet. And what I guess we want to reiterate from that is that please comment. It's always good. We can take the positives from it, but I think there's always lessons to be learned from it. And everyone's doing a different thing, running a different race, right? The other thing I wanted to touch on quickly, at the beginning of this video, you stood here and you said, nothing has really gone wrong, which is great, okay? Because you had good builders.
Yeah.
That equally could have gone the complete reverse. We could be sitting there halfway through a refurb, you saying, Justin, this has been a nightmare. I never want to do this again. So how you do that first deal, okay, I know it's not your first deal, but for anyone watching who's about to get started, how you do that first deal, that first refurb is so important. So do, watch this, rewatch this, take the lessons about meeting good builders, because if you go out there and that first project's a nightmare, you're probably going to stop after that. Whereas I feel like it's safe to say you're probably going to do this for a long time now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no slowing down.
Yeah. Talking of which, you've kind of continued. You haven't stopped, have you? So what's the next step for you?
So as this one was coming to the end of the refurb, or even sort of halfway through, I was already looking for the next BRRR project. So capital has allowed me that I can go out, not relying on refinancing from this one. I can use the capital I have to find something else. I didn't want to run them simultaneous for the first one, so I wanted to allow to go through the process and then sort of back to back on them. So I've actually had an offer accepted, going through the conveyancing process to buy another property in Portsmouth. Not quite such an extensive refurb, but it's got some questionable things like pink sparkly wallpaper. So it just, again, needs modernisation, freshening up, and it would be suitable for rental. So that's exciting, that will complete. That was a modern method of auction. So positional, that what had happened with that one is it was one that would interest me. And I think this comes back to, we go on to different topics here.
Yeah.
This goes back to separating yourself from kind of the outcome or the type of property you're gonna buy, because ultimately, I had a number in my mind. It went through modern method of auction once, didn't sell. There was another person potentially interested, but I said, I give £1,000 more, but this is my position. Chain free, cash buyer, can complete within the time easily, and move with speed. It's all about moving with speed in the property game. So I put that on the table. They came back and said, no, they're wanting a little bit more. I said, are you prepared to increase? I said, no, that's my number. A week went past, they rang me up and said, is it still on the table? I said, yes, it is. Great, they'd like to do it. So had the offer accepted, going for that process. I've already spoken to the builders again to plan for a lighter refurb, shall we call on that one.
Yeah.
But then moving forward, the plan is, of course, because these properties are leaving money in the deal and the refinancing, which I don't think's the end of the world, and we discussed this before, that you can try and get all-out money deals, but I think they're gold unicorns. But I know in 10 years down the line, when there's, I have 10, 20, 30 properties, whatever, and a huge portfolio and flipping regularly, I'm not going to be concerned about the fact that the first deal left in, the amount of money and capital it did. That's not going to concern me. Once this has been refinanced, I'm going to use capital that I have with this refinance to do a separate flip. Hopefully find that deal on alongside that one's going under its refurbishment as well. So it'll probably be 2 BRRRs, 1 flip. Future plans as well. Now that I've got the confidence in myself, obviously, to find good deals, I am going to look into sourcing properties as well, because I know even in this short period of time, I've got friends, colleagues, etc., that have reached out to me from Instagram and say, I'd like to get into property, but I don't have the first clue where to start, what's a good deal. And of course, as a property sourcer, that is the value that we can add to help those type of people start their investing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So very busy by the sounds of
Yes.
it, to already have the next project lined up, be thinking about the third one already. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of buy 2, flip 1, or that hold 2, flip 1 model, which is great. And yeah, for anyone that's watching, we'll put your Instagram on here. Follow Adam, be part of the journey of the refurbs, ask you questions, and if anyone would like a property sourced, they can get in touch. You can start that conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to focus just around this area because I know this area now and what looks like a good deal, but we'll expand as time goes on.
Nice one. Well, I just want to say thanks again for coming on the channel.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Forward to being at the next property with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Shortly after we finished filming this video, Adam had some great news. He had let the property very close to the full rental price and on a long-term rental basis. Hopefully soon he will also hear back regarding his refinance. As always, I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for watching and well, I'll see you in the next one.